confirmation on that?
Yes, I can see it now.
Yeah, okay, good. So,
okay. Yeah. All right. So for today, I'm gonna be discussing about all about GlobalG.A.P certification. So the presentation was divided into five main topics. Can we proceed to the next
there we
slide?
go, yeah.
Okay, so these are the five topics that I'm going to be discussing on what is really GlobalG.A.P certification. So not everyone knows what is GlobalG.A.P or who are GlobalG.A.P. So both questions can be answered by that. Okay, now GlobalG.A.P, if we can show the next slide please. Okay, is a private sector body that sets voluntary standards for certification and implementation of good agricultural practices around the globe. And if you can see the logo, it is the trademark and a set of standards for good agricultural practices, or GAP. So the GlobalG.A.P standard is primarily designed to reassure consumers about how food is produced by the farm. So nowadays, I think people are already aware of where they source their food, how safe is the food that they eat. So this GlobalG.A.P standard is giving the assurance to the consumers. And also, when we found products that are GlobalG.A.P certified, it means that this producer has implemented practices that minimize the effects or the impact to the environment. And also, it reduced the use of chemical inputs and ensuring a responsible approach to workers' health and safety, as well as animal welfare. Okay, next I will be showing to you how does GlobalG.A.P certification across the globe. So right now, there are already 203,220 producers under certification. It has increased by 2.9% since December 2018. And there are already certified producers in 130 countries. And for non-covered crops, it means the open field, plantation type or open field, there are already 3.6 hectares of non-covered crops GlobalG.A.P certified. And if we are going to look at the region, let's show the next slide. As you can see, the GlobalG.A.P certification has already spread regionally in different continents. So in Europe, it has already 58.8% share of certified producers. And if we check Asia and Oceania, it has increased from 8.9% in 2018, and now it's 9.4%. And in other region also, GlobalG.A.P is there. So before, when it's not GlobalG.A.P yet, it's Europe.A.P. It's mainly in Europe, but now it has been spread globally. Okay, next slide, I'll be discussing about the GlobalG.A.P Integrated Farm Assurance Standard. So this is, it depends on which sector are you. So this is, the GlobalG.A.P standard has different module. So for GlobalG.A.P IFA standard version 5, it is built on a system of modules that enables producers to get certified for several sub-scopes. So for instance, so integrated farm assurance, then we have the all farm base. All farm base module is, this is the foundation of all standards and consists of all requirements that all producers must follow. So say for example, if I am a producer of pineapple, so then I will follow the standard for all farm base and then crops base. and then the sub-module, which is fruit and vegetables. But if your business is on aquaculture, then you are going to follow the standard for aquaculture. And then you are going to select, the only sub-module for aquaculture is finfish, crustaceans, and mollusks. And also for livestock, you have choices also which sub-module you are going to follow. Okay. And the good thing about GlobalG.A.P standard, okay, now I'm talking about the fruit and vegetable sub-module. It has 222 control points, or the requirements that you are going to follow are 222, but do not be overwhelmed by that, because if we are going to group the requirements, it would appear to be like it's 34% more on traceability and management system, and 32% food safety, and then 20% for environment and biodiversity, and then 15% workers' health and safety. So that's the good thing about GlobalG.A.P, because we don't, the standard itself does not limit to food safety alone, but a holistic approach. So nowadays we are into sustainability. Everyone is aware of what sustainability is. So GlobalG.A.P is one of the tools or one of the answers to our questions on how are we going to comply, or how are we going to engage in sustainability business. Okay, so other standards alongside integrated farm assurance, GlobalG.A.P also offers other standards for the industry and supply chains. So we have chain of custody and crops for processing. Chain of custody, if you are a trader, or if you are consolidating fresh fruit and vegetables, then you can apply for chain of custody. And for crops for processing, if, say for example, you have frozen, you have ginger, and then you want to make it a frozen ginger or blended ginger, whatever, so you can apply for crops for processing. All right. Now let's proceed to the certification options. GlobalG.A.P has provided us the options. So if you are an individual producer, if you have 5 hectares of land for turmeric and ginger or banana, you can apply for the certification. And if you own several production sites, you can still apply for option 1. Option 1 multi-site. It can be option 1 multi-site without QMS or quality management system, or option 1 multi-site with QMS or with quality management system. So you are an individual producer with several production sites, you can opt for option 1 certification. But if you are a group of farmers that are interested to apply for the certification, it is possible with option 2. Next slide. Okay, if you are a producer group applies for a group certification, you can choose option 2. The group as a legal entity is the certificate holder once certified, and the group shall have a QMS implemented and comply with rules set out in general regulations too. So this is really possible for small growers. If we are going to look at the next slide, it shows that most of the certified producers are option 2, with option 2 certification option, right? If in 2018, it's 74.6% of the certified producers are under option 2 or group certification. It has reduced in 2019 by a little percentage. But the statistics, it shows that it is really possible to have a group certification. If you are small farmers and you have same crops, or you can group together and then apply for a certification. So that's what GlobalG.A.P. Now I'll be talking to you about the operational challenges. I'm sure you will be asking about this one. These 6 challenges that I have listed here are based on the nonconformities that I have detected or I have raised for the past years that I was doing audit for GlobalG.A.P. And yeah, number 1 is really the complying the document requirements and recording activities. For not all farmers are adept to recording, right? Even if in big companies, in plantation type, recording is somewhat like a tenacious task for them. But in GlobalG.A.P. standard, you are really required to do the recording. But whatever the activities you are doing in the farm, may it be applying fertilizers for soil fertility or harvesting, it should be recorded. And the next challenge is about bearing the cost for residue analysis and water analysis. In the standard, you are required to have evidence that you are complying the maximum residue limit of the country that you are exporting to, or the country of destination, and as well as the regulations in your country. Say for example, in the Philippines, we are exporting banana, pineapple to Japan, South Korea, also in New Zealand. And our producers cannot just export directly if they don't have the proof that their products are safe and did not exceed the maximum residue limit. So the producers have all this analysis. And water analysis, because in GlobalG.A.P. you are required to have drinkable water, potable water to be used in your crops. So during the pre-harvesting and post-harvesting, water should be ensured that it is safe to be used in our product. So you have water analysis. You need to have a test to the laboratory. And the third one is the technical assistance in the use of recommended chemicals. For big plantations like here in the Philippines, it's not a problem, but it would be a problem because they have people. But it would be a problem for the small growers, especially if they don't get support from the government or any agency like agriculture. If they cannot get support from that, it would be hard for them to comply with this requirement that there must be a person who has the technical knowledge of recommending fertilizers to be used in the crop and the chemicals or the plant protection products to be used in a certain crop. Next challenge would be about, not yet, next challenge is about the training of farmers and workers. Training in GlobalG.A.P., it is, you need to have a consistent training to all farmers, all workers, because it is in the requirement that, like for example, hygiene training shall be done annually to all workers, including managers and owners. So it is in the standard, so it must be complied. So the training shall be done like a cycle. Like you had a training at the first quarter, and make sure at the last quarter of the year you still give training to your workers, because it will be checked during the audit. And not only few selected workers, but all. And next is the accessibility of potable water to be used in pre-harvest and post-harvest. Here we have abundant source of water but for some areas, it's the potable water is not accessible. So they have difficulty on that, the accessibility of potable water. Next is, or the last challenge that I think is important, depending on what kind of operations or producers, there is this cost on infrastructure just to meet the food safety and global gap requirement. Say, for example, you have a packed house, but then it's already dilapidated and there are, you can identify a lot of hazards to your food. So basically, you need to spend for the repair. So that's one of the example of operational challenges. Next, we can proceed on the certification benefits. All right, so these benefits that I have listed here, you can also see this in GlobalG.A.P website. Okay, first is once you are certified, it adds value to your products by complying with a globally recognized standard. You can gain access to new local and global customers, markets, suppliers, and retailers. By the way, GlobalG.A.P, those buyers or markets that are looking for GlobalG.A.P certified, they can just look it up in the GlobalG.A.P database. So say, for example, if they want to get products from Fiji, they can just type in the database and see who are those producers that are GlobalG.A.P certified. And another is it reduces your exposure to food safety and product safety reputational risks. So have you heard about products being recalled because it has problem on food safety or it is a fraud? So by having GlobalG.A.P, you are the risk of putting your company reputation the risk has been reduced. Also, it improved the efficiency of your farm processes and management because in GlobalG.A.P you are putting a system in your company. So once you are already aware of what the standard is asking, then automatically the management can have they are now efficient on what to do or on the process that they are doing. And lastly, when you are GlobalG.A.P certified, you will get the 13-digit number. It's a unique number. That's your identification. So even if you don't need to put the GlobalG.A.P logo on your packaging material, but in your business card, you can put the GlobalG.A.P number. You can say you are GlobalG.A.P certified, and then buyers can connect with you. So it is that's the certification benefits. When you are GlobalG.A.P certified, your product are being recognized globally. So it does not only limit to a certain market, but it's recognized globally. Okay. Now, this is the last part. I'll be talking about the GlobalG.A.P certification in the Philippines. So just to give you a background, Philippines is one of the largest banana exporter in the world. And recently in the news in May 2020, we are set to be the second largest exporter of bananas in the next 9 years. One of our clients are exporting bananas to New Zealand and also pineapples to New Zealand. So that's why our clients here in the Philippines are really serious about achieving the GlobalG.A.P certification, because if they will not have the certificate, they cannot continue to export in New Zealand or even in Japan and other markets. So that's how certification is important to our producers here. Okay, right, next slide. Okay, that picture is right, and also Philippines is one of the top 3 producing pineapple in the globe, in the world. And we are exporting also to, next slide, one of our markets is New Zealand, right? And next picture is about how a packing house look like for banana producer. As you can see, the workers have complete PPE. Like they have masks, they have gloves, and they have hairnet because they are protecting the banana from hair fall, hair strains. Then next is the before, how farm looks like before certification. If you can see on the next slide, so I'll just discuss about the picture. So this is before certification. The first picture you saw the containers, chemical containers. Most of the problems here is that we always reuse chemical containers, thinking that it is environmentally friendly because we are reusing plastics or we are reusing chemical container. But in GlobalG.A.P, that's not allowed. Once you are done using the content of that container, it should be disposed properly. So it has been a problem in the Philippines, the reusing of empty chemical container. But the good thing now is that chemical companies have their stewardship program. They, when they deliver the chemicals, they will also retrieve the empty containers. And the next picture is about workers. So they are actually applying fertilizer, but unfortunately, they don't have the proper protective equipment, personal protective equipment. And the reason for that is some workers really don't, they are not comfortable using PPE and they don't have the proper awareness of what is it for. And next slide is about waste management. It's used oil. Supposedly, it will be contained. So waste management also is a problem here when it's before certification. The waste being generated from the farm are just being left out anywhere, and there's no proper segregation, retrieval, and the whole thing about waste management. However, after certification, the companies are already aware of what to do with their waste. They become responsible to the environment. So that's one thing about GlobalG.A.P because you need also to protect the environment. And second, next slide, when it comes to after certification, although this is not directly connected to the first previous slide, in GlobalG.A.P certification, the companies here realize that yes, we are going to provide rest area for workers where they can eat, where they can rest, where they can use the toilet. Because previously, before certification, no, farmers can just eat anywhere in the open field. But the management realized that since we are serious about GlobalG.A.P certification, yes, we need to provide them with an area where they can rest. It does not mean that we need to provide the workers with a beautiful or like expensive rest area. So here it's made of bamboos, so it's sufficient enough where workers can rest. And here also a banana worker, he was provided with a complete PPE. And some companies are investing on tree seedlings to be planted on buffer area. So it is actually double purpose. You secure your plantation by planting trees or shrubs, and at the same time, you are protecting the environment and other animals that would get into your area. So they use the trees or shrubs around the plantation. The last slide would be about how certification has changed their ways. So first is, aside from complying the market demand, that's actually number one, companies are able to commit on sustainability. Again, I would say that they don't produce safe food products to their customers, but also they are protecting their workers, they are protecting the environment, and at the same time, they achieve their profit. Companies are able to put the system in place in how they operate. So when at first it's a struggle on how to start, but once you get the hang of it, you understand the standard, then it's easy to operate now because you're putting a system. For every new operations or expansion, they refer to risk assessments. GlobalG.A.P is about it's a risk-based approach. So whatever you do in the farm, you always have this risk assessment. May it be health and safety risk assessment, food safety risk assessment, food defense, and all that required by GlobalG.A.P. Lastly, it's about heighten their awareness in food defense and food fraud, and I would like to add traceability. Traceability in the supply chain is very important because once you, let's say a producer is exporting product to New Zealand, and when the product reached New Zealand, they have a complaint about a residue, chemical residue. So the client, the producer received the complaint, and then they start doing the traceability. The traceability is from finished product down to how and where it has been harvested or produced. So GlobalG.A.P has the answer for that because once you follow the standard, you will be able to trace back your product backward and forward. Okay, so that ends my presentation. I hope you get something about GlobalG.A.P certification.
Excellent, Joanna. Thank you so much for sharing that. I'm sure that, I mean, you gave everyone a lot of things to consider and to think about. While you were speaking, I saw that we have some Q&As and also I think that it was really interesting, the fact that apart obviously from having I mean, for GlobalG.A.P being so important for traceability in the supply chain and to enter international markets, I think that is key what you said about the efficiency on the farm process and the management of that by achieving this certification, I mean, businesses can actually work better.
Yes.
So yeah, thank you again for sharing that, and I'll start with the Q&A. This one is from Kirit, and it says, for the training of farmers, most of the individual farmers are using knowledge passed on through years of historical farming in Fiji and not actual certified farm training. How would GlobalG.A.P look into auditing that, and would this be an issue? I think that this is either, I mean, better for you, for Joanna to answer, but Seth is also available to answer any of your questions.
Okay, I'll start first. Actually, it depends on the training that that's being required. Most of the trainings required in the GlobalG.A.P is the health and safety. So number one is how they should be taught about how they are going to use the chemicals safely, or when they spray, they must use the appropriate personal protective equipment or PPE, and also about hygiene training, the proper hand washing. So that's all the basic training required in GlobalG.A.P.
Excellent, thank you for that. We have another question that it says, how does GlobalG.A.P tie with organic certifications that are available, And does GlobalG.A.P have a view towards encouraging organics and reducing pesticides and other chemicals on the farm?
Okay. Actually, the difference between GlobalG.A.P and organic certification is the use of the plant protection products or the pesticides chemical. You can also be GlobalG.A.P certified and at the same time organic certified with, by just eliminating the use of chemicals. Because once you are already you are putting a system into your farm operation and you don't use the chemicals, that's also possible for GlobalG.A.P certification.
Great. We have another question. Maybe Seth can help you with this one. Obviously, I mean, Fiji doesn't have agencies on site. So one of the questions says, how would Fiji be able to get GlobalG.A.P implemented in the farms since there are no agencies there?
I agree. Maybe Joanna can go to your mic a little bit because of the
Sorry.
The echo is quite big. Yeah, I would happy to answer this question. We have been actually actively conducting business and audit in Fiji, coordinated via Singapore. We are of course a company with auditors lying around in the world, so there aren't a need to have a physical agency or an office outfit in Fiji, because most of the business can be conducted via emails, and the audit will be done by an auditors flying in from Philippines, Indonesia, or even Sri Lanka if necessary. I would also like to address the previous question by Peter regarding the cost involved, because I think it's pretty much linked. If you were to fly in someone from overseas, and how does the cost look like? It really depends on the number of man days that we're talking about and how big your farms, and whether you are an individual farmer or a cooperative. Of course, you referring back to the presentation by Joanna, you see an option 1 and option 2. Of course, to lower the general cost, an option 2 would make a lot of sense, because then you can group together the farmers and form a cooperative. And if that's the case, we make one trip down, spend a couple of days on site, and the cost will be shared among the individual farmers. So we are looking at quite a reasonable amount per year. And the ongoing cost will be the annual surveillance, because the certificate is valid for 3 years, but then we provided the annual surveillance is conducted on a yearly basis. I won't be able to give an exact cost, but I'm happy to share my contact detail. And if you could just send me any details like number of farmers, the hectareage, what kind of crops are you doing, I will be happy to quote you an indicative amount. Of course, that will be a little bit more fair to the whole audience. Yeah. I hope that answered the questions.
Perfect. Thank you, Seth. There's one more here that it talks about what's the general appetite for GlobalG.A.P certified products globally, and are global consumers willing to pay the premium price for this?
Maybe I could take the first half of this, and Joanna, if we have some time to go to add on. I would say, as of all certified product, the trends of sustainability are ever growing. That's a fact. You have the UN SDG, you have individual buying houses, and you have a big market change. They are actually looking towards certified and at least some sort of a sustainability committed produced crop. So in fact, it is not really about a market premium, but a requirement before you even enter into the market. Of course, some of the consumers are willing, some of the consumers in certain markets are willing to pay a little bit premium over it. But again, that depends on the individual countries. Like I mentioned earlier on, most of the markets now are a requirement rather than an added premium scenario. Joanna, do you have your thought on this, on the bananas market that you mentioned earlier on?
I'm not really sure about the premium price, but what I understood from our clients is that the assurance that they can still deliver or export their products long term. So that's when they comply with the requirements, the certification, they have the assurance that for long-term business, that the business will be continued once they have that. Not so much on the...
Yeah, and I think most of the company have their own sustainability policy or commitment or roadmap. So one of their requirements is also to procure from a certified or sustainability produced crops. So again, it boils down to the requirements of the buyers.
Yes, and I would like to add, I mean, from New Zealand perspective, our experience working with big retailers is that although maybe the price is not premium, what we see is that if you get GlobalG.A.P, you would be able to supply these big retailers, and that would result in probably having a long-term program with them and moving a lot of volume that ultimately will benefit your business as well. I think we have one more. Yeah. How often do the audits take place, and does this mean that every audit someone will have to fly into Fiji to do the audit?
Audit takes place once a year, and to answer your question, yes, there must be someone on site to conduct the audit, and there are also requirements. I'm not too sure whether Joanna can also help me on that. That one, during the certification cycle, any one of the audit must be during the harvesting period. So because the harvesting period it can be from time to time, and you cannot plan your audit maybe on this month of the year every time, and so that if I go down and there is no harvest taking place, they can be fine for the first couple of years, but then on the third year or so on, there must be a live harvest taking place. Except for unforeseen circumstances like the current pandemic, where the scheme owner allows a remote audit, then there are possibility that the audit can be conducted via online. Otherwise, to answer your question, yes, every year someone must be on site. Anything to add, Joanna?
Okay.
Oh, yeah, for option 2, in the regulation, it has been stated that there will be 2 visits. First visit for the square root of the number of farmers, and then the second visit is the half of the square root. So in a year, it will be 2 visits for option 2, but for option 1, it's only annual visit. Unless there is a reason to do an unannounced audit, then we'll visit again for the unannounced. That's it.
Excellent. We have a couple more. The other question that we have here is, can I get a chain of custody certification if the farmers we source produce from aren't GlobalG.A.P certified?
Are not GlobalG.A.P certified, you mean?
Yeah, it says, can I get a chain of custody certification if the farmers we source produce from aren't GlobalG.A.P certified?
If it's GlobalG.A.P certified, yes, they can apply for a chain of custody, but if they source from non-certified,
yeah,
they cannot, yeah.
They can't?
They cannot.
Okay, so everyone must be certified, GlobalG.A.P certified.
Exactly, yes. Okay.
We have another one. In terms of your Fiji experience, we know that you've been working with Ranandi, Joanna, last year. What was your view in terms of the standard of practices, reporting? Yeah, I mean, if you can talk a little bit about what you saw when you were there.
Okay, so last year I went to Fiji, and my experience was really nice because the farm itself, it's not monocropping. They have different products planted in one plantation, and they also have their own, they actually have a set of trainings for their workers. They have a storage for their PPE, and they have the proper recording that the standard is requiring for. So Renadi has been successful in the GlobalG.A.P certification. So I think some of the businesses also in Fiji can replicate what Renadi had done to their operations.
Excellent. There's another question that asks if you can please elaborate more on the technical assistance in the use of chemicals. What does this include?
Okay. Technical assistance mean the one who recommends fertilizers or plant protection products, they have a degree in agriculture, and they have developed already an expertise on their field. Let's say they are an agronomist, they are plant pathologists, something like that. So that's the technical assistance that.
Excellent. And based on your experience, Joanna, but also Seth, are you aware if in other countries, whether the government or Ministry of Agriculture or any other agency supports farmers in terms of subsidies or grants towards achieving global GAP?
I can talk on behalf of Singapore. I think Singapore, we have a international agency. It's called International Export Agencies. What it is for under the Ministry of Trade. What it does is that all exporting companies or operations that can show the substantial amount of their businesses are exporting, and they need this certificate or they need these credentials to export into the destination countries, there may be a grant of up to 65 to 70%. But the proof was rather stringent that is that you must have this, otherwise you won't be able to go into the destination countries. I'm not too sure whether Philippines does have some schemes, but I think in terms of Fiji, there are always possibility to reach out to the Ministry of Agriculture.
Joanna, do you have any comments on that from your experience?
I'm just not sure about Thailand. When I went there, this is not confirmed, but from what I have understood is the government is supporting them for the certification process, like the trainings they can provide the producers. And in the Philippines, it's not for Global GAP, but for organic. They have this subsidy for certification.
Excellent. Okay. Okay, if the attendees don't have any further questions, I really would like to thank Joanna and Seth for being here today, and to everyone who joined the webinar, let you know that we will be sharing Joanna's slides and the contact details for both of them. So if you have any further questions, you can always contact them, or yeah, I mean, definitely contact me. Most of you know me already, so I'm happy to help you as well. We hope again that this presentation has helped you to better understand the certifications, and as you know, the Auckland team is always here to support you. And well, thank you again, Seth and Joanna, and just let me acknowledge the Ministry of Commerce, Trade, Tourism and Transport, and the Ministry of Agriculture and Investment Fiji, that they always support our events as well, so thank you to them. And yeah, I mean, thank you everyone. Joanna, Seth, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Excellent. Have a great day, everyone, and stay safe. See you next time.